Hold for plane.
I'm Henry.
I'm Yami.
And welcome back to Artificial Generation, a podcast where we talk about generative AI and its potential effect on young influencers.
Today we're going over our generative AI and online influencing survey, as well as a few general ways of protecting children online, and also some potential solutions. We sent out a survey to get people's thoughts on generative AI and online influencing. We had a total of 47 survey participants. Our survey participants' ages range from 18 to 33, with the average being 22. Their average use of media consumption a day was 4 to 6 hours, and then in second place, 1 to 2 hours, and then in third place, 7 to 9 hours.
We asked the survey participants several questions on their thoughts on AI, how harmful they thought it was, how safe they thought it would be for other people to be online in the age of AI. We also asked the survey participants their thoughts on online influencing and how safe it is for some kids to be online, especially in the age of AI, and also how ethical it could be to put your kid online, and if there's any ethical routes that parents can take when they're posting their child online.
We asked our participants how confident they are in their ability to spot AI online. We had a scale of 1 to 5. The majority of them leaned towards being more confident in their ability. Using the same scale of 1 to 5, most of our participants stated that most content that they see on social media is not AI generated.
And while it was kind of split down the middle, they were leaning more towards the belief that most of the content that they see isn't AI generated. So even if they think that some maybe, or a large majority maybe, especially nowadays, they definitely lean towards thinking that like a majority of the content still isn't AI generated.
We then asked our participants on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being harmful, 5 being beneficial, how would you describe generative AI? The majority of our participants would describe generative AI being harmful.
And then we asked our survey participants how safe they thought it was for people under the age of 18 to be posting content about themselves online. And a good majority of them said that they think it is pretty harmful and unsafe for people under the age of 18 to be putting themselves out there online. And then we had a question that was a little bit more open-ended that asked if they thought that there was an ethical route for parents to take when posting their children on social media for profit. Most of them agreed that there is an ethical route. Pretty much everyone said there should be some limitations put on the kind of content they consume, how much control the parents could have on that content. There was a lot of people that suggested that you blur the child's face to respect their privacy. They also suggested, making a trust fund. There's even one that said, if it's
for childcare, I think.
Yeah, if the revenue was put into like childcare, then it would be ethical. And there were some no's that no, there isn't an ethical route to take. But for the majority, they agreed that you can put your child out there, but if you want it to be as safe as possible, you have to put some, rules for yourself.
Rules or barriers.
Yeah, exactly. And then we had a question that asked how worried the survey participant would be about AI's potential impact on the mental, physical, and monetary well-being of social media users. And a large majority said that they're very worried about this possibility. And then our last question focused on how worried the survey participants might be about AI's potential impact specifically on young influencers, like their public image and safety. And this was also in the large majority where they have a worry about AI's impact on young influencers. So I think before we start discussing how these responses could reflect the social attitude towards AI and its potential effect on young influencers, I think it's worth noting that this survey definitely had an audience that was of mostly young people who are in college, who are active social media users, and are pretty informed on AI because they encounter it pretty much every day when they're on social media. And for these survey participants, AI is pretty much like a normal occurrence in their everyday lives. If for older people who might not be on social media as much or might not have like the cognitive ability to be able to spot AI, or just like may not encounter it enough to be used to it, it would be harder for them. So for this survey, it's definitely reflecting more of like the younger population who actually is on social media. But I think it was pretty clear from our survey that like young adult social media users have a pretty negative attitude towards AI.
Yeah, and I think it could definitely like push us towards creating more of a safer space for young influencers and really anybody using social media.
Yeah, because when I feel like majority of the people affected by AI, if we're talking about young influencers, it's good that it's the young people who are taking this stance against AI. And, you know, I think it's, I guess, a good relation to like voting whenever we have like elections. Like, it's the young people who need to be active about it, who need to be, have these like strong opinions.
Younger generations have more of an understanding of AI as well. So like whereas older generations, I feel like, you know, they're on Facebook or whatever and they see these cute little pictures of AI animals or a little more concerning, but even children, like babies or something, and they're AI generated, but they just see it as a cute video where my mom even, she'll show me a video of a baby doing something and I'm like, Mom, that's AI. Like immediately clock it, that's AI. And then whereas my first reaction is like, oh, this is AI, bye. Like let me swipe away.
Yeah.
But my mom will watch the full video.
It's something that definitely has to be trained. It's something that I like to, that I kind of, I don't know if this is an actual like term, but I like to think of like people being like tech literate or like I guess now it's like, yeah, like media literacy. Yeah, I think this goes pretty hard into the idea of like media literacy. AI is now kind of like an essential part of media literacy. If you don't really have a strong grasp of like, you know, what is AI and being able to like spot AI images, if you can't really do that, like I guess your level of media literacy isn't that high. So I would say people that you're describing, like, you know, the moms on Facebook who kind of just can't tell what is AI. There's definitely like an issue with media literacy in that aspect. And I don't know if there's a way that we can like, or should be trying to teach people like, hey, like if you want to spot AI, this is what you should be looking for.
Yeah.
So we can like keep media literacy alive, I guess.
Yeah. Also, sometimes I feel like they don't think about that too.
Yeah.
Like, again, back to the cute videos, all they see is a cute video. Whereas younger generations, we see more so like AI, what it took to make this, what it can lead to. That's at least me. Like I immediately started thinking, oh my gosh, this is AI. Yeah. We also saw that from our participants, but also sometimes online, young adult social media users tend to see AI as a potential threat to young influencers. So from our survey participants and also a few online users, young adult social media users tend to see AI as a potential threat to young influencers. Taylor Swift, a very popular artist, she was very concerned about her use of her image pertaining to AI. Most of her concerns came from deep fakes and generative AI images of herself. It got to a concerning point when it reached the pornographic level. After that hit, it got to the presidential level. President Biden at the time kind of started paying more attention to it. And that alone was for an adult. You can only imagine what would happen when it comes to young influencers.
So I think overall, the responses to our survey were pretty promising in terms of people's attitudes towards AI. Personally, it's pretty refreshing to see like a common shared attitude towards AI that is pretty negative, specifically towards, you know, how it can affect people physically, emotionally, financially. Because, you know, AI obviously has a lot of uses in, you know, the medical field and a lot of workplaces where it can speed things up and make things more convenient, make things more accessible to people. But because I feel like what we're focusing on mostly with our research is, you know, the safety impacts of AI, specifically on young people that are online, young influencers. So I think it was pretty refreshing to see the responses that kind of confirmed that viewpoint, that shared attitude. that this may actually be an unsafe system for young people online when there's not many rules put in place as of yet. But speaking of the actual rules that are being put in place in Congress and actual state legislation, there is progress in that aspect. There's the Enforce Act, which targets AI generated child sexual abuse material. There's also a law in North Dakota that tries to prohibit AI-powered robots from stalking or harassing people online, creating a more safer space in terms of, stalking, because it's a pretty common thing on the internet. Stalking is a big issue, especially for people who are influencers in the public eye.
Especially for young kids, because they're definitely the most vulnerable, especially online.
Yeah, and they may not understand if
Absolutely.
the person that they're interacting with, that they get a DM from, is a stalker. There's also the Kids Internet and Digital Safety Act, also known as the Kids Act, and this is more of kind of like a sweeping legislative act that covers a lot of bases in terms of AI and child safety. It tries to protect them from obscene content, making parental controls more strong so that the parents who are monitoring the content have more control over, what type of content they see, so they're not seeing more explicit material that they shouldn't be seeing. And not only does it just, strengthen the security measures, it also puts funding into research and education to address the harms that these children might be facing online.
Aside from actual laws and everything like that, we can trace the problem back and start it at home and introduce children to basic online safety. It's important to inform children that the internet space is forever, no matter what you're posting, what you're saying online. And again, children are very vulnerable online. And they're unfortunately also targets of many online users. And they should be informed of the fact that they're consuming content that is available not just to them, but also to everybody else. So this specific content may not be for them, and maybe they should steer clear of it. Then also, creating content is already a danger, and posting your kids online is a danger. So I feel that parents need to be a little more hands-on with their children's online use. And it should go beyond just setting restrictions on your children's phones and actually sitting them down and informing them of potential threats and dangers from the online community.
I think at the same time, it's also good to strike a balance between how you monitor your child and control what they consume and post, because you want to make sure that they're being safe on the internet, but it's also at the same time I do kind of want to say impossible to completely bar them from the social media and everything. And I think it's also important to strike a balance when parents are setting these limitations and controlling what they have their child create and consume online, because you want to make sure that they're being safe, but at the same time, you don't want to appear as a helicopter parent. And it's kind of impossible to completely bar your child from the online world, because it's pretty much necessary for everyday life at this point. Everything is online. So I think it's good to strike a balance in that sense.
Yeah, I feel like at least when I was a kid, I did not have very many restrictions.
Yeah.
Especially when it came to making accounts online. I think I got Instagram when I was in 4th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And what business did I have having Instagram in 4th grade?
Yeah.
But I also didn't want to feel behind from all my friends. I knew all my friends had accounts and stuff like that. So, it's it's hard to find that balance probably, but you have to, especially in this online space that is changing what feels like every day.
Yeah.
I think a very important solution, and probably one that is almost the strongest, I would say, is going back to the Enforce Act. It was only introduced last year, so it hasn't really been I don't want to say it hasn't been discussed, but it hasn't gone through all the checkpoints that it needs to in order to become law. So it was introduced by Representative Ann Wagner in 2025, and it offers a solution that is more so aimed at strengthening the prosecutions and the indictments of AI-generated content, specifically AI-generated child sexual abuse material. The bill makes sure that the perpetrators themselves are really held accountable, and it secures those legal loopholes that are sometimes present. It ensures stricter sentencing, and it removes the statute of limitations for certain cases. And it will also mandate sex offender registration, as well as quite a few other things. A lot of online families tend to live in certain states where a lot of them actually don't have a lot of laws that will benefit the children. But luckily, a few states have recognized this issue, and some of those states include California, Utah, Minnesota, and Illinois.
So there's clearly active efforts relating to AI and child influencers and, like you said, family channels, like on the government level, both like state and federal, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think this goes back to what we were talking about in the first episode, that this is such a new issue, a new system, that you can like see these laws currently being created and passed and proposed, that I feel like this is the core issue right now that we're kind of seeing, is that it's not that there's like a lack of effort, but it's like the regulation is still in progress, that there's a lot of still like wiggle room for weird stuff to happen.
Loopholes.
Yeah.
And it's so new, it's so fresh, and it also feels like it keeps changing every day and it keeps evolving every day. So I can only imagine that it's very difficult to try to regulate something that is actively changing every day.
Yeah.
Personally, I think the Enforce Act is one of the strongest solutions and one of the strongest bills we have seen to put in protections. It's a good start to having people steer away from doing such things.
So I think I learned a lot doing this podcast and the research for it, because I think I went into the series with an attitude of, I guess, like, oh, it's hopeless. Yeah. And, AI is going to kind of ruin everything. And while I still think that could be a possibility, there is proof that it is being worked on. Yeah. And I could see a future where, kids are much safer online. But I think people have to be, and especially, the young adult social media users in our survey, need to be very proactive about emphasizing the potential harm of AI, and trying to get legislation made on it that protects young people online.
I think I also went in thinking the same thing. Like, I tend to feel very hopeless when it comes to AI. I think it's just, again, it is changing every day, so it is very scary. It's scary in the sense that it is being used in almost everything at this point. Just yesterday in my class, we brought up the use of these kind of surveillance cameras, but they're using AI, and they were put on campus at one point, and they're trying to put them up essentially everywhere. So again, AI is just a terrifying topic, but I think after looking into actual laws and seeing what restrictions, and knowing that there's people who are able to change things, knowing that even they're actively attempting to restrict AI and restrict its power almost, knowing that, I think it doesn't calm me, but it's nice to know that there are people who can change things in those rooms.
So I think that about wraps up our 3-episode podcast. Once again, I'm Henry.
I'm Yami.
And this has been Artificial Generation.
Yippee!
And it fades out.